Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Monte Anderson, co-founder of the Incremental Development Alliance. Monte, you're welcome to go ahead and get started.
Okay, good to be here today, Ryan and Bobby and everybody. Glad to see you again. And I am Monte Anderson. I am one of the co-founders of Incremental Development. I'm also an incremental developer for the last 30 years. This October 9th, my company's 30 years old in the southern Dallas County area. And the difference in Dallas is the northern Dallas is the haves and the southern Dallas is the have-nots. And that's where I'm from. And so that's where we start today is what is this incremental development? So incremental development is basically 1 to 3 story buildings in your neighborhood, constantly evolving and regenerating. Although I will say that a lot of our little developers go way past that. Cities are often better when they're built and maintained and owned by locals. You know, instead of those big developers and the big corporations that come to your town to do stuff to you or take the money somewhere else. And so the process and the product that we're talking about is step buildings. They're small scale, they're more accessible. You know, they're time enhanced. They contribute to the neighborhood for many years. They're not just throw together retail centers and then in 10 years they're no good. They're entrepreneurial. They pay for themselves and they're purposeful because they fill the neighborhood's needs. And so in this process, you can learn and earn 1 step at a time. For instance, if you've got no money and you're interested in your neighborhood, you can have a street market. And then from there, you can go to trailers or trucks or pop-up shops or do markets in parking lots and even temporary, temporary uses in buildings. And from there up, you can go to houses and duplexes and bigger buildings, as you can see. So our goal at Incremental Development was to create 1,000 small developers with the cities that support them, because what we were seeing was, the middle class really losing wealth, the middle class people not having buildings and ownership. We always saw was the big businesses coming in and owning all the real estate. And we feel like it's one of the only ways that this country can rebuild itself is just the middle class ends up owning the real estate again. And so what we do is we teach and nurture implementers. We train small business owners and neighborhood advocates and real estate professionals and builders, carpenters, plumbers, software developers, how to become small developers. We coach civic groups and governments, on how to create a thriving ecosystem where these small developers and entrepreneurs can do this kind of work. And then we connect a continent of neighborhood level doers to celebrate the successes and share the notes and the opportunities. In other words, we share with each other, which is opposite of what you see in the real estate business, where people really hold things really tight and never share. And so why do we do this? Why? Because here's what we've observed, that local people care because especially if they got skin in the game, they're more likely to build the human scale buildings, those great little buildings on those main streets that we all love. And local people hire locals and they keep the money circulating. And you can see, feel, and respond to the needs of the community quickly with the feedback. And the process builds skills and relationships. And that's what we want to talk about and teach, is that. Here's the big difference right here. So creating a job versus building wealth. On the left-hand side, you've got a Dunkin' Donuts. It's $500,000 to buy a franchise and you go rent a space. Typically it's a store manager or a job versus the donut maker owning their building and the donut shop and retaining wealth of a building and the business over a lifetime and even in generationally also. So here's the value proposition for cities. If you will do this as a city, if you'll build supportive small developer ecosystem and with the right kind of lenders and investors, the right kind of codes and processes, and create the infrastructure for infill, then you get this. You get a robust anti-fragile tax base. You get increased taxes per acre. You get locally owned businesses and stable, adaptable districts. And our approach is pretty simple. Locals who care about their neighborhoods and are willing to learn. Patch the local systems, build networks to support them long-term, and work in small steps, make little mistakes early. So one of the key parts of our philosophy is to cultivate your neighborhood farm. We call ourselves farmers. So commit to your neighborhood, commit to your city for the rest of your life, and it changes your luck. It's going to change the laws of the universe around you. And just like this farmer here who knows everything about his field, he knows, you know, he's tilled the soil and he's pulled the weeds and he's fertilized. He knows everything. You'll know everything about your community. You'll know who the tenants are, who's got properties, who makes loans, who has money. And so we're going to look at a Duncanville farm, one of mine that I've been working in since 2002. And you can see that's a pretty small little farm right there. That's the downtown area. And those are some of the buildings that I've rebuilt. So see, you can start with nothing here. You know, you start on the street with the street market, which is something we've been doing for many years. It continues to produce a place for new entrepreneurs to come up that can go into buildings. See, we're cultivating our own people right out of our neighborhood. And so you can start with as little as this. This is a modest house. This was a $40,000 house that this little lady here, who's happened to be, she was a housekeeper at a hotel I owned at one point, and now she owns her own business, and now she owns her own house. It's an 800 square foot house, and you can see how cute it is without really having to do too much to it to just fix it up. See, there's the kitchen. It's very simple. IKEA cabinets, little color, you know, can go a long ways. So you could take an old building like this. It's an old post office, you know, and you can rip the roof off and add 2 apartments on top of it. You know, here we take a property that's $60,000 and turn it into a $650,000 property without adding any infrastructure to the city. Here's another one. It's a little Main Street building, an owner occupied Main Street building. It was on the tax rolls for $13,000. It's one of the only buildings I've ever torn down. But you see, we didn't go 3 stories, 4 stories. We didn't want to really invest that much money back into that Main Street at the time. We wanted to keep it simple. So you see, there's 2 900 square foot retail spaces and 2 450 square foot apartments on the back. And so here's how they work. See, we figured out in Duncanville and Main Street at the time that no matter what size you had, the market could pay about $1,500 or $1,650 a month in that range. So if we had a 2,000 square foot space, you're only going to be getting like $12 or $10 a square foot for the space. And that wouldn't make it work for a developer. A developer needed $20 or $22. So by downsizing the space and creating small quality spaces, we could raise the price per square foot on both the apartments, which in that town were renting for about 90 cents a square foot at the time. And we could raise the rates on the retail. And as you can see, you got to get the scale right when you downsize these spaces. You got to really pay attention to the interior finish. So there's another mixed use, you know, small building on Main Street. It's 22,000 square feet with retail below, about 14 apartments on the top. And as you can see, there's the one photo in the middle on the bottom. That's a 900 square foot bar with a lot of outdoor space. They were the 2nd highest alcohol sales last year, behind one of the great big seafood restaurants, which is called Papado. I don't know if y'all have that out in Arizona, but the huge, you know, alcohol sales. And so out of 900 square feet, they were 2nd in sales in the Southwest Dallas County region out of that smallest space. So DeSoto is a city right next to Duncanville, and here's something that I know you'll see out in Tucson, in both Tucson and South Tucson. Here's an old shopping center. What do you do with a dead mall? I mean, dead shopping center. And here's what we were going to do. We were going to put a 99-cent store in this old mall and just fix it up and sell it and get rid of it. When the mayor of the city came to us and said, "Hey, Monte, would you do something different?" So what we did was we busted up the parking lot, as you can see where the brown is, and created gravel area and these outdoor trailers to give some life in that dead parking lot to get people to come inside the building. And now we have food trailers out there that are more permanent, and they're hugely busy. The one there in the front does $25,000 a week, 20 out of a trailer at 50% profit. Okay, selling crab legs and boiled shrimp. So what do you do inside the space? If you look at the top of this page, that's the main entrance, and those purple spaces up there are 400 square foot restaurants. The green spaces, the light green, are retail spaces. The brown are small office spaces. And then the dark gray are some bigger spaces for like a yoga center and a health club and an eyelash school. And so we've got about 50 businesses inside this space. So instead of getting $6 a square foot for the 99-cent store in this space, we're getting over $20 a square foot now. Now the management's a little bit tougher because it's like herding cats with all of these. It's more like apartment management rather than commercial property management. So it's very similar to the same. You have short-term leases, they're turning over more often. So in the front of the building was just a big blank wall. And then those restaurants, we cut holes in the wall. And when we did it pre-COVID, they didn't use those windows so much because we're just not used to that here in Texas. We think everything still has to be inside, maybe similar in Tucson where we have warmer temperatures. But boy, when COVID hit, these restaurants turned themselves around and started selling out the front. And all of them, all of my little restaurants there, all survived through COVID. I couldn't believe it. And so there you see that my youngest entrepreneur, he was 11 years old. His sister was 13. They started a snow cone stand. And so truly are we cultivating people right out of the community. And so here's just a few photos of some of the events and the food going on and the different people. You know, we got everything from African wear to artists to cupcakes to candle makers, painters, healers, you know, and small offices. And if you can see, this was a very inexpensive finish out because we didn't take all those walls to the, let me back up a minute. We didn't take all those walls to the ceiling. They go up just about 8 foot and they're open at the top. So the air conditioning and the sprinkler and the lights could be all open. And there we are at the grand opening. And so I want to show you one other thing. It's the roommate house, I call it. And this is a single family house done. This is a multi-family done on single family. So this was one of the first, maybe in the country, unsubsidized homeless housing products, but this can be done in middle class or affordable housing. It can be done in anywhere, but this was my sketch. You can tell why I'm not an architect, but this is my sketch and my performance. And this is how I think. I sketch in numbers, you know, I sketch and run numbers all the time. This was done back in April of 17. As you can see, I took a little 2-bedroom house and added what I'm calling the 2 roommate units onto it. And in this case, we wanted to really fix the house up nicely. So we want to spend about $110 a square foot back then. Today, that wouldn't be enough today with the construction costs have gone up. And what we did to keep this from being subsidized is we got some of the rich people in Dallas were donating to the Community Development Corporation that built this. And the Community Development Corporation then in turn sold it to a homeless person who is now an owner and going to be a renter. So the ex-homeless person owns the property and rents to the 2 roommate units. As you see here, these are the 2 roommate units. And they're able to rent them very cheaply for like $250 each. And as you can see, the payments on this are about $927 minus $500 is $427 a month. So this guy owns a house for $427 a month. And then his 2 roommates are coming out of shelters. So this is what it ended up looking like. Here's the entry, the kitchen, the 2 rooms. And here's the tricky part right here. See these doors? You can go from the main unit to the first unit to the second, and that makes it a 4-bedroom house, not multifamily. So this could go on a single family zoned lot. Now these rooms, these 2 roommate units, they don't have kitchens. They're like a hotel, but they've got hot plates, convection oven, they got a full bath. And then once a week they go out the back door and they can go in and use the laundry room of the main house. It's been very successful, and they're building more now. And this is what it looks like after it got built. You can see it's very simple. There's the 2 roommate units. There's the back doors going to the laundry. So each person has their own security. You know, they got their own place. What we found in the lower income areas that people really need to have their own space. And so here's the interior of the house. As you can see, we didn't just put lipstick on the pig. We really tried to do a good job and did do a good job. And so, you know, from Main Street, you know, can be built incrementally too. Here's a project that I wanted to build a strip center, but didn't have the money to build it all speculative. So we decided to build it one at a time. So we built one building. Here's the donut shop with an apartment on the back. Then we built a second building on, and then we built a third building on. And then today there's a fourth building on. And then we're keeping adding on to this little strip center. So this becomes an owner occupied strip center. See, in most places, this insurance guy, see, he would have been renting space. He wouldn't have been building wealth for himself. And so there you go. There's the apartment on the back of the donut store. So a family, they sold their house, they moved into this apartment, they ran the donut shop. When they got it up and running, then they bought themselves a house. Now they've got a rental unit. So here's where you come in. And there's a low barrier to entry. Here's what we need. We need potential small developers known as the operating partners. And this is people doing this. We'd like to see you doing it full time, but you can start off doing it on the side. We need investment partners. This is people that either have land or cash or some kind of equity that can go into the projects, or they can loan us the money. And the small development champions, these are the people that care about the neighborhoods. This is typically the cities, the Chamber of Commerce, Main Street groups, and people like that. Small developers, they can be real estate professionals, and they can be from nonprofit or for-profit. They can be real estate agents, make really good real estate developers, small developers, property managers, architects, designers, engineers, construction contractors, home builders, tradespeople, small business owners of any kind. Small investors, we need local banks. We need property owners, retired individuals, baby boomers with high net worth who want to leave a legacy in their town. Private equity from local investors or angel investors, professionals from banks or local foundations. Whoops. Oh, and that's it. I'm done. So that's the quick or what we are as incremental developers. And we'll go further into this in a little bit with the boot camp. That's a quick overview. I think you get the point. And this is not hard, but it's complex. And if you take small steps, anybody can do it, is what we believe. I'm done.
Thank you, Monte.
Stop sharing. I'm gonna give it to Neil. You want me to?
Yep.
Okay.
I love this presentation, and you did it in record time.
Yeah, you did great, Monte.
Thank you.
Nice work.
Neil?
I want to make sure Neil had some good time because he's got some really good stuff going on right now.
Yeah, how's that for everybody? Can you see that full slide?
Looks good.
Yep.
Great. I learned a few new Zoom tricks today, so I'm getting to try them out. How about this laser pointer?
Yep,
Looks
that
good.
works too.
All right. Tricks are working out. Yeah, so anyway, thanks everyone for being here. It's really good to see everybody. Always a pleasure to see Monte's projects. Every time I see Monte's projects, I get more inspired. I remember my first time meeting Monte were we in Flint or Memphis? I think it was Memphis. He had me wanting to go out into like the roughest neighborhood here in Portland and try to start doing something, so since then, I was inspired to go, and I did buy a duplex and fix it up. And then since then, I have bought a single family house with the intention of adding a basement apartment and an ADU out back. And so I've been using owner occupied strategies to add units, but also create a positive rental experience for my tenants. So anyway, I am Neil Heller with Neighborhood Workshop, and Neighborhood Workshop is a performa-based planning firm out of Portland, Oregon. I'm also faculty with the Incremental Development Alliance now for about 5 years. And so while IncDev is more well known for their trainings, I help out on the other side of the coin to try to find ways to smooth out potential obstacles or hurdles for up and coming new small scale developers that get trained up. And one way that we do this is through a code diagnostic, where we troubleshoot the standards and processes that a small developer might experience. And we go do this by spot testing a couple locations in town and modeling of projects against existing conditions and just kind of see where we find any rubs. Right? But let me do this. Whoops. So we used to build neighborhoods differently than we do now. Residential neighborhoods didn't used to be so monotonous, right? So this is an image that I took recently. This is in a high amenity neighborhood here in my city, and it's close to downtown. And one thing that I want to point out is this single family house next to an eightplex, right? So the families living in this apartment, they're not required to purchase a high priced house in order to get to live in this neighborhood, right? Every city has neighborhoods like this. They tend to be kind of pre-World War, before the auto era and before modern zoning. But I mean, most of them have been zoned out and now tend to be single family only. And these two seem to exist well together. I mean, I don't see anything incompatible with these two side by side. And if you zoom out even further and you look on just this end of the block, you'll see a large single family house here on the right side of the screen. You'll see two small single family houses in the middle of this block here. And then you see the eightplex that we saw a second ago, right? So what this is doing is it's creating an this is how we create mixed income neighborhoods, right? This is probably more expensive than this small house, but then this also provides an opportunity for folks to live in the neighborhood and not pay as much. Right, so these are the kinds of things that I'll be working on with folks from South Tucson, working with the planners and looking at the zoning standards and things like that, just to identify some of the hurdles and rubs, like I mentioned. So these are some of the things that I'll be keeping in mind as I go through and look at things and talk with folks and understand the conditions there on the ground. You know, looking at the rules, like what is the purpose of this rule? What's the intention? What was the idea behind this that led to this being a rule in the first place? And how does this rule affect the cost of building, therefore its affordability? Can the standards be adjusted to reduce potential development costs? As we know right now, material and labor costs are at an all-time high. If there's anything that a zoning code standard can do to bring that cost down, I'm sure is welcome. In addition, we want to be looking at whether this rule has an exclusionary effect. Does it keep people out of neighborhoods? And if they're high amenity neighborhoods where people want to be, maybe we should think about opening them up for more people. And then ultimately, you know, is this rule in place? Is it getting what they want? Right. So I want to share with you a couple of things, and this is meant to be kind of lighthearted, you know, I don't know, believe it or not, you know, zoning codes are more often political documents with borrowed standards, and many planners around the country, they're working with zoning codes that maybe haven't been updated in decades. I worked on a zoning code in a small town in Wyoming, and they still had mention of horses, how people were required to like get out of the way of horses. So that was sort of interesting and definitely time for an update. So anyway, these are standards. So I'm part of a Facebook group for small developers, and I just kind of crowdsource and ask them some of the goofier zones that they've come across. And I got some good responses, and I just kind of want to share those with you here. This one's pretty hilarious. You know, there was one zone that could not be 35 feet, that it had to be 30 feet because the next intent zone is 35 feet. Therefore, the lower zone could not be 35 feet. Everything must be consistent, right? So the goal here was that the zoning code itself be a consistent, gradual thing that happens despite the builders and saying that, hey, if we could get that 35 feet, we could get taller ceilings, better living spaces, and we could use web trusses to run utilities. Right, and here's another one. This is one from a long time ago. I heard a council member say, yeah, like should be next to like as folks were applying for a rezone. But it sort of begged the question, you know, like, where does that end? So if you have a single family house next to a single family house next to a single family house, where does that end and how does it end? This one's pretty hilarious. Your ADU cannot be bigger than 750 square feet because then it is a duplex. But you could imagine if you have a 2,000 square foot house, an 800 square foot ADU, would still be an ADU. But for some reason, there was this notion that, a larger ADU would start to resemble a duplex. This is probably my favorite one, right? So this is common, especially with ADU standards, that a detached ADU must be of similar style or look similar to the main house, right? So if your main house is a monster, right, your little house out back needs to be a little monster as well. So anyway, and I hope you found those to be useful and kind of funny, but like I showed earlier, a healthy neighborhood has a range of unit types, different living situations for different life phases. Healthy neighborhoods also have amenities within walking distance. And what this does is this helps reduce household transportation costs, so it keeps things more affordable. But there's a world of unit type possibilities out there to make this happen. Unfortunately, most are illegal to build today. So unless it's a single family house or it's an apartment complex or a strip mall, most options in many communities are off the table. And so not only does this create a mismatch in community needs, it also has enormous financial repercussions for local households. And so when I am reviewing standards here in this diagnostic process, working on the other side of the coin while folks are attending the workshop and the boot camps to learn small development, I'll be working with city planners and city administrators and county planners to look at some of the existing standards. And these are some of the ones that I'll be taking a look at. These are ones that I come across often as we do work around the country, right? Because city is spelled C-I-T-Y, right? And different uses rely on each other. But when we look at common contemporary zoning codes, we have C over here, we have Y over here, and we don't even know where T went, right? And so when we look at things like oversupply of a single use, that's a scenario where it can distort market prices for land when too much of one type gets overzoned for a specific use. If we look at maximum density or minimum density, sometimes zoning will require a minimum density in order to, maybe the goal is to create some sort of a mixed use entertainment district. But the minimum density requirement maybe is not responding to current market conditions. And so nothing happens until the market can grow to be at the point that it can support that minimum density. And so allowing small scale to happen can help contribute to creating better market conditions. A big one is excessive parking. People often think that zoning is about buildings, and that it's kind of true, but not totally. What zoning actually does is it ensures room for setbacks, room for yard space, and definitely room for parking, right? And then whatever is left over is where you can put your building if it fits. And so the thing about parking spaces is that they're not flexible. They come in a standard size because cars are standard size, like 9 feet by 20 feet, something like that. But then you mix in the drive aisles and room for turning, and this eats up a lot of land area, and oftentimes leading to more parking than room for housing or commerce. Another one is minimum lot area per unit. And I found that this can lead to large increases in land costs depending on what a location's typical lot size is. And so if you have to, in order to do additional units, maybe a 3-plex or a 4-plex, that requires you to go out and buy another piece of land. And you hope that there's another piece of land adjacent to the one that you're looking at. But that additional land cost can also render a project to be financially infeasible. And I find this to be a very common in towns that I work with around the West, especially in Colorado and Wyoming. I haven't gotten into Tucson, Arizona, what the standards are there. So, but these are things I'll be looking for. And then lastly, minimum lot sizes are an interesting one, because when a bank is looking to make a construction loan, they will allow a value for the purchase price of the lot to be maybe 20 to 35% of the appraisal value of the house to be built. And so if your minimum lot size is set at a certain size, that sets a threshold for a certain price, which informs the housing sale price, right? So that can lead to excessively high thresholds for entry into a neighborhood. So let me share with you an example kind of why. So, we talked about these zoning standards, and that's really wonky stuff, that zoning people like me kind of get into, and, run performers against the standards and see how it works out and what we can do to ameliorate any gaps. But let me run through an example here with you real quick about why this matters. So I worked with Mike Keene, who is a small developer and has a farm in South Bend, Indiana. This building that you see in this slide is an old industrial building that he's in the process of renovating, similarly to what Monte has done with his larger big box buildings, right? But in South Bend, they tend to be historic. He's got other projects going besides just this one, a lot smaller ones. But this is a big anchor in that neighborhood. And so what I can tell you is that South Bend has already gone through this process of updating their zoning codes, and they allow for a full range of housing and commercial types within their neighborhoods. And so Mike is working in this near northwest neighborhood. He's got what he calls his farm, like Monte mentioned, the farm. But also in addition, South Bend so they've updated their zoning codes, but they've also recently eliminated their parking requirements. Not that developers won't build parking, just that now the developer gets to decide how much parking is required for their project. And so in South Bend, they tend to have smaller lots than you probably experience in in Arizona. And so this makes a huge difference for these folks here in South Bend. So this that you're seeing is Mike's farm. This is where he's not just growing buildings, right? He's also growing wealth, he's growing community, and he's growing opportunity. And so he calls it Portage Midtown. Portage Midtown is just a 10-acre section within that larger near northwest neighborhood. And if you look at it, it can be further broken down into different sections, each with their own sort of opportunities and constraints. So he's got Shetterly Triangle, which is where he's working with affordable housing developers to build affordable housing. There's the bakery building that you saw a picture of. That's the large adaptive reuse. Renovations, he's bought a few buildings and brought them back to life. He's got a mixed use building and a live work. And then there are some vacant city-owned parcels that he has plans for. All right, so let's kind of go through and look at these. Here's a build out and phasing plan for Mike's farm. And so it's important to mention that there are other entities working in this area and that he's collaborating with for the benefit of the neighborhood. There's a hometown development. There's the near Northwest CDC, which is building affordable housing, and also Habitat for Humanity. And so Mike, let's move on to this first phase that we're calling, I don't know if Monte mentioned it, but it creates kind of a flywheel effect. These are not optimal. This isn't prime market conditions for real estate development. This is an area known for its vacancy. This is not where an out-of-town developer would choose to set up shop. But when you have a local developer who's committed to the neighborhood, they can make decisions that that will help turn that flywheel, get things going, help get the neighborhood stabilized. So Mike has worked with affordable housing developers, like I mentioned. He has purchased properties and conveyed them to the affordable housing developers at below market rate. He's also gone on to, this picture on the right that you see, he's gone on to build an oversized Adirondack chair. It looks kind of small in this picture, a normal size, but if you were to go sit on that thing, it'd be massive, right? You'd look really small on it. but people come here and they take pictures of it. They tag the neighborhood on Instagram. And so it changes the perception of the neighborhood. It makes it more friendly, you know, and he's got some sculptures. In addition to this phase 1 flywheel effect, I mentioned the live work and the mixed use renovations that he's done, which is really important. Actually, it's not just bringing the neighborhood back. What it's doing is it's setting comps and it's setting rent rates for future development. When he does a new build, right? If he does a new live work, he'll have established comps on this renovated live work. In addition, it's kind of important to mention that in this live work, he worked with a local artist to get that local artist into that building, because he's got a great network, and he got that artist into that building, you know, below market rate, but that's okay because this is like slow money, slow urbanism, and it's important to his overall vision. So I'm showing you this slide here. This is the phases of implementation. And so it's important to understand that Mike's been at this since 2016. So we're stepping in midstream. So some of these projects have happened and are finished. He's in the process of going through and adapting that bakery. And then there are more projects to come online as things kind of build up. But if you can see here in the middle, the reason I show you this slide is to, well, individual phases sort of inform each other. But also if you look, there is, take a note of those different building types. It might be hard to see. So let me tell you, he's got tiny houses, he's got duplexes, fourplexes, cottage courts, live works, even a multi-generational triplex. So this is like in this 9-10 acre section of the neighborhood, he's got the full spectrum of missing middle housing. And it's really neat to see. So what does this mean, right? So what I worked with Mike to do was build pro formas and then layer them in over time with an appreciation, a modest 2% appreciation over time, but looking also at the municipal tax rate on these projects to understand what that does for the community at large, right? And so we can map that out over time and what happens to the municipal revenue in this 10 acre section, this 3.13 acres. So 3 acres of land ends up being 50 residential units, 60,000 square feet of commercial, small spaces, great for startups, and resulting in 172 jobs, right? So those are some of the physical benefits. If we look at financial benefits of what Mike is doing in his farm, when we aggregate these, we're looking at $15 million in private investment, but we're also getting rent ranges anywhere from $975 to $1,775 a month, right? So for South Bend, that equates to 50 to 90% of the area median income, which is how the affordable housing developers, affordable housing folks determine affordability. Those are super, super low, really awesome affordability rates. And this is privately provided affordable housing, right? This is not subsidized affordable housing. And so I guess the point of all this is to say that if we can get our zoning standards correct, and if we can allow the right uses and then calibrate those uses locally so that small developers can build out these kinds of farms, we can see these kinds of benefits. Privately provided affordable housing, an additional $300,000 a year of municipal revenue, you know, things that are going to go to building parks and paying the firefighters year after year after year. And so if we put that on a value per acre basis, which is a way to measure various development types, this area of the neighborhood is going from $66,000 per acre to almost $5 million value per acre. So it's a huge increase. So, I mean, these are small buildings, but they're making a huge impact. And that's not to mention any of the social benefits of, we mentioned the affordable home ownership, the affordable rents, affordable commercial, and then the women and minority owned businesses as tenants. And so Mike has partnered with an educational organization to place startup businesses in his renovated bakery. So I think that I've gone on probably long enough and talked enough. So I just want to close with this here. So thanks all.
Hey, Neil, I was just going to add something there. You know, those
Yeah.
just to give you guys a perspective. You know, Neil's talking about up to 5 million an acre. Some of the projects that I showed you earlier in Duncanville, you know, they're anywhere from $2 to $6 million per acre. Whereas the Costco down on the freeway, or the Walmart down on the freeway, is on the tax rolls for 490,000 an acre. So the big box. So the power of small, and cities that get this are becoming wealthy. They're going to become wealthy. And we all know that the Costco or the Walmart, they won't be here forever. They're going to be here for 15 or 20 years and they're gone. I think their average is about 14 years now on the big boxes that they stay. And even post COVID, it's going to be worse. The big retail is even worse. It's going to go quicker.
Thanks, Monty and Neil. Next up is Corky Poster. Corky, will you share with us what we've got in the 2018 plan for the city of South Tucson to kind of bring this down to earth for us locally?
Thanks, Ryan. Let me share my screen and see how that works. Do you all see that?
Yep, that looks good.
And see that now? Okay. Well, thanks to both of you for a really, really interesting presentation. It's very helpful to hear and see what's going on in other places, and the kind of small scale development that we've been looking at is pretty inspirational. And what's more inspirational, I think, are the numbers and the way the numbers, although small, start to add up. I'm Corky Poster. I'm an architect and planner with Poster Murto McDonald. This was 2018. So our previous name was Poster Frost Murto. So things change quickly. And this is a project that we did as a team with the Primavera Foundation, Poster Murto McDonald, and the city of South Tucson. It was a 2018, what I would call a community development plan. So it's a lot more about, it's more than about physical development. It's about cultural development, educational development. And what I've done, and I've been asked really just to ground the presentations that you've seen in some local reality and try to begin to describe the conditions and goals and objectives of the city of South Tucson, and then hopefully blend the information we have locally with the ideas that were just presented to you, and maybe get some ideas about how we might move forward. I'm going to actually show you the report. I was asked really to go through the report that we did in 2018. And I also know that Sheree Jimenez, who did the heavy lifting on this project, is on the call, as is Peggy Hutchison, Alonso Morado, and Tamara Prime from the Primavera Foundation. And I think Mick Jensen is here from the city of South Tucson. So unmute your mics, guys, if you want to kick in some commentary. I'm going to go through this fairly quickly, and I urge all of you to move a little bit closer to your screen, because these are actually the pages from the report. I'm not going to read through all of it, but and I can make this available to Ryan and Mick. Mick has this. I can make it available to Ryan Stevenson after this for those that want to see this in some detail. I'm just going to walk through it. This is a project we did in 2018, and it was really intended to lay out the large parameters of goals and objectives for the community development of the city of South Tucson. You can see here, and this gives you a good idea of how it was organized, that we divided the plan into 4 major areas: human development, built environment, wellness and mobility, and civic life. So right away you get the notion that we're not just talking about planning and zoning, and we're not just talking about physical development, although that's one piece of this, but we understood from the very beginning that this is about the development of a community in all aspects of the community. And we took a holistic view of how South Tucson might develop. I will read this one section, and I promise it's the last thing I will read in small letters. But this is the vision for the plan. The city of South Tucson is a vibrant, dense, and culturally rich center of Tucson with a strong sense of its own identity. The goal of the planning process is to see South Tucson's existing assets strengthened and developed into a strategic community development plan that is culturally relevant and appropriate for the existing residents and businesses in the area. The South Tucson community needs to be actively engaged in this planning process to be sure that the plan is one that empowers and unifies local leadership, both at the grassroots level and the institutional level. Once this leadership base is established and the plan goals formulated, local interests can be preserved and strengthened, and future economic development and investment that occurs from outside the community can be filtered through the leadership structure. So this is really in the same spirit of the first two presentations you saw, which is how do we develop our community for our community and perhaps by our community. This took place over about almost a 2-year period. And we had a whole series of public meetings. This, of course, was pre-COVID when we could do that. And we tended to have meetings based on topics, a couple of preliminary public meetings and talking about open space and community development and zoning and land use and transportation and health and nutrition, and then putting it all together in a final planning open house in just about 3 years ago. So we organized, I said this before, into human development. We talked about arts and culture. And arts and culture in Tucson is about a lot of things, including food. And so we walked through that and had plans and goals and action items based on all of those meetings and all of the participation of the folks at that meetings, and then identified partners that could help us get through that. We identified local arts and cultural organizations in the red dotted line city of South Tucson. And as most of you imagine, a lot of that is focused on food, a really strong and rich part of South Tucson's culture. But we also had public art and handmade signs and a variety of activities that are cultural in nature and particularly focused around 4th Avenue and 6th Avenue. We looked at education and childcare, a big concern of our residents, and people understand that education of their children is really how the whole community will begin to improve. And we looked at where those facilities were located. Each time we didn't just use the limits of South Tucson as a hard boundary, but understood that for some people those boundaries don't exist. And so we looked at also the near those activities located in and around South Tucson. We also did some comparison of graphs of educational levels. We're consistently showing the South Tucson in terms of their educational level, and also interestingly, a chart at the bottom in terms of satisfaction with community schools, which is really quite good and quite an important part of South Tucson life. We talked about economic development, focusing on local talent and cultural assets, and trying to build a South Tucson economy that is vibrant, sustainable, and strong. Again, we identified goals and activities. We identified partners, in this case, the YWCA, House of Neighborly Services, Las Artes, Primavera Foundation, Garden Kitchen, all of whom are quite actively involved in South Tucson. I should say, and although I'm the presenter here, the Primavera Foundation is a major player in South Tucson development and has devoted decades to a focused effort at economic development and community development. We looked at iconic businesses and distinctive buildings, and you can see again, focused particularly on South 4th Avenue and South 6th Avenue. We also looked at the richness that South Tucson has in terms of its local amazing food. But you can also see this as the trouble that COVID has brought, when these restaurants were really the economic engine of South Tucson, and with the limitation of indoor dining and the limited outdoor seating that these restaurants have, the pandemic has had a profound effect on not just the folks of South Tucson, but its economy. We looked at employment and training, again, looking at partners and looking at pathways to opportunity moving forward. Again, we looked at business by business sector and analyzed that in some detail. And a lot of this information came from survey work that Primavera Foundation has been doing now for a couple of decades in South Tucson. We looked at real estate development, which is the topic of the first two presentations and is relevant here as well. Development should happen in ways that strengthen the local character and existing economic fabric of the city, while also bringing outside investment. We looked at the residential housing market, for example, and looked at residential prices. You can see very vividly what the recession of 2007, 2008, 9, and 10 did to residential housing market, and also did to residential housing prices. Remember, these charts are 3 or 4 years old. Also looking at real estate and the kinds of sales that were happening in that year. Also residential terms of sale by terms and type. We looked at property sales in and around South Tucson with a half-mile radius beyond. And you can see that it was somewhat active, but not a booming market. You can see that that's the comparative years of 2013 and 2015. This was current real estate listings at the time this plan was done. And then we looked at finance, strengthening the local economy by making the city of South Tucson a destination zone. Looking at zoning and land use, make land use and zoning a support system for economic development goals and healthy neighborhoods. And we've been working with Mick Jensen and with some help from Pima County, trying to make some progress in zoning and land use questions. And here you can see the South Tucson land use. You can see very actively the 4th Avenue and 6th Avenue, as well as the 29th Street corridors for commercial, and that corresponds to the zoning. But you can also look at the vacancy that we have, vacancy along commercial corridors, and then vacant land in the city. You can look at vacancy by type, but more importantly, and this really relates to the previous presentation, where are the infill opportunities? You can see a couple of key things here. In the area north of that diagonal, which is the El Paso and Southwestern Greenway, you can see that most of the infill opportunities are scattered, that there are individual vacant properties and a potential for some infill. You can also see the El Paso and Southwestern Greenway, the diagonal, which is really a potential catalyst for development. Those of you not familiar with it, there's an abandoned railroad that goes all the way through South Tucson, up through the west side of Tucson, along the east side of the freeway, and ends roughly in Barrio Anita. And there's been an effort going on now for several years to try to reclaim that abandoned railroad as a park and alternate modes route, which is also, I think, a catalyst for development, small scale development moving forward. And then finally, in the southern portion of South Tucson and the southeast corner, You can see the area in and around the old dog track, the Greyhound dog track. And there's a lot of vacant land there. And there's pretty interesting, larger scale areas for development going really all the way up to 36th Street as well. We looked at housing and with the simple goal that all South Tucson should have access to safe, sanitary, and affordable housing. South Tucson has a very, very high rate of rental. If you look at the city of Tucson, it's roughly 50-50, but here in South Tucson, it's about 70-30, a much higher rental rate and a much higher absentee landlord rate, which is a real problem in future development. You can also see at the chart at the bottom the age of the housing stock. Look at the right-hand chart, and you can see that compared to Tucson in blue, which has about a quarter of its housing stock built prior to 1959, fully half of South Tucson's housing stock. So not only is it housing that is high rental rate with a low income demographic, but also it's deteriorated housing just from age. And then finally, we recognize that health and nutrition is a key part of this. Creatively and practically address the health and well-being needs of South Tucson residents. Recently worked together with the Garden Kitchen, which is now helping folks in health and nutrition in the area. And again, the Primavera Foundation did a project in 2010 called Healthy South Tucson and worked closely with a whole variety of agencies working, trying to really develop a healthy and nutritious South Tucson. We looked at parks and open space, which we see as not a land use, but rather a health and nutrition issue. It's pretty sad story. This is just greenery in and around South Tucson. And this is tree cover, again, fairly dense. And this is parks. And if you think there aren't any, you're right. The El Paso and Southwest Greenway is a potential park, but it's really not fully developed. And so South Tucson is very open space poor, and that's really not just a recreational issue, but it's a health issue. We looked at transportation questions. South Tucson is heavily user of public transportation and a lot of homes without a vehicle. Compare South in the lower chart, compare South Tucson with the city of Tucson in terms of percent of not private vehicles, which therefore translates into use of public transportation by need. And then lots of comments earlier about making it a much more pedestrian friendly, bicycle friendly environment so that folks don't need the automobiles. Right now, not having an automobile is really a limitation for access to employment, and that really shouldn't be that way. And then we talked about civic life, democracy, and participation, not only making it a healthier and safer community, but full participation by its residents. And again, Primavera has done a lot of great work studying community involvement and community change. We looked at social services and the availability of those in the community, and then map those as part of our inventory. Looked at public services available, looked at public safety and how that impacts the lives of South Tucson. Our value statement saying that all South Tucson residents have a fundamental right to feel safe and secure in their community, which is a little bit of a different statement than a police statement, and that was intentional. And then mapping where folks felt like they were safe, and also looking at police reports. The bottom chart, which is a little hard to see, shows that the areas in blue are where there are 0 incident calls. In red, more than 10 incident calls. And so you can see where the safe areas are relative to police calls and where the areas that are more challenging. And we also look closely at safety for kids. The numbers 81, 84, and 91 were about how people felt about the safety of the youth and feeling safe or somewhat safe. 81% playing outside, 84% going to and from school, and 91% during the school day. So I think South Tucson gets a bad rap in terms of safety and public safety. According to that chart, folks feel pretty safe, and particularly safe for their children. We are now embarking, a similar team actually, embarking on a new effort. We're just beginning on a City of South Tucson neighborhood revitalization strategy area. Some of you may know the NERSA. The NERSA is a HUD funded through Pima County, but it's a funded, fairly formulaic effort. In effect, it will be an update of the 2018 plan, and we're working with, again, Sharia Jimenez, the Primavera Foundation, Debbie Chess, and also November Prentice, who's helping us with our demographic. We just completed a very detailed neighborhood revitalization strategy area in NERSA, working closely with Pima County in the Flowing Wells area. So we have a good template for that multifaceted effort at planning. And it's very similar in a way to what we did in 2018 in South Tucson, which makes it a comprehensive, not just land use and zoning, but rather all of the aspects of people's lives. So we're beginning working on that. We've been slowed down by COVID, but we're beginning to develop boundaries, area needs assessment, demographics, and eventually identifying not just goals and performance objectives, but eventually the community organizations will help us implement that. And that's what I have. Any additional comments from Sharia or the folks from Primavera? If not, we can open to questions, and I will stop sharing my screen.
I have a question for you, Corky. Is there, I want to know what the opportunities are for public involvement in the NERSA.
Very extensive, but also limited by COVID. We have a whole series of public meetings. We've not started those meetings yet. We're basically trying to get all of the inventory and demographic work done while we are so limited in our community outreach efforts, as you might guess. The computer access and meetings like this is quite limited in South Tucson, both for, in some cases, language issues, but in most cases, no access to internet. The libraries are by and large closed, and computer access as well. So we're trying to figure out how to do that well. But as you all know, it's a challenge in these pandemic times. Any comments, Sharia, Alonso, Tamara, Peggy?
Corky, I think it looks like a lot of opportunity to me.
I think so.
And it looks like you guys have got a good, it's, I mean, it takes a community to build a building, it takes a community to build a mark, and it's, you guys, what you're doing right there is, to me, is so important, creating that ecosystem for the small developers to come in. And that's so important. Without that, it's hard to fight. It's hard enough to fight as a small developer, when you got good code and good zoning, then what you're doing is making it really, that you're really creating that environment to attract entrepreneurs and wealth. you're creating the environment to do that. Just like if we were trying to attract ducks flying from Mexico to Canada, we would build a certain pond and a stalk, you know, so they would land. So you're doing the same thing that's got to attract us.
If I could just kind of comment on that. And one of the issues that really has, that we've constantly dealt with in our meetings is that, as you may or may not be able to tell from that map, the city of South Tucson sits directly south of downtown Tucson. And the change in neighborhood, change in economic opportunity and value has been spreading south from downtown, pretty much knocking on the South Tucson borders. And so the question I would like to throw open to the whole group on this call is, be careful what you wish for, I guess, that how does one make it so that the development in South Tucson benefits folks from South Tucson and doesn't really become a opportunity for folks who see cheap land and really changes the character of the neighborhood in a way that may not be positive. Trey, you look like your hand's up. Is that scratching your head? Or?
Yeah, no, my hand was up. I thank you, Corky. I also wanted to reiterate that point that you know, there was a really strong consensus in the public meetings that we had that everyone loved the mom and pop shops, the local character of South Tucson, you know, the largely Hispanic Chicano identity, you know, but the trouble is, since me and my sister actually at the start of around that same time, around 2016, 2017, we had done a survey, and she had done a photographic survey of a lot of the small businesses, and so many of them have closed even since then. So we've continued to see small business closure, you know, amidst a burgeoning, you know, downtown. And then on top of that, you know, we've seen like Burger King go in, and, you know, all these things that were contrary to the plan and what we wanted to see happen, you know, in terms of health and community. So it is a real challenge. And yeah, Corky, you nailed it on the head. I think that that for me, and part of why I'm really interested in this group is to cultivate that leadership, to cultivate the small scale developers. I see Vado on the phone. It's great. I'm so glad you got to come to this, because Vado is a local contractor here in Tucson, and I really believe we have the talent and the skill locally to do this and to make it happen. I think we just need a little bit of the, you know, support, I think, at the, you know, the zoning level, but also some support, you know, financially. I mean, really, we need the banks to start opening their purse strings to us small scale developers, and really having that faith and taking the leap with us, you know, that we can do this, that we have the talent, we have the skills, and I believe we have the passion. And I really feel that most of the people here on this call, we're all of the same mindset. We don't want to see gentrification happen, you know, by outside developers and by, you know, the Burger Kings and the McDonald's. You know, we want to see the mom and shop, you know, legacy continue and be supported.
So
Right. And I mean, with the real estate, a lot of the real estate game is like, you know, things get devalued, and so then they're kind of like at a wholesale price. And at the same time, we're going to have BRT mass transit lines running through South Tucson, and that's going to create, you know, a lot of buzz. And who's going to be doing that development in the future? Is it going to be South Tucson, or is it going to be somebody else?
So I would say this is, I call it gentrification. Okay, gentrification is when the locals get the property and they get to do it and they get to benefit rather than the guys from out of town. And so one of the things that I see, and I'm in South Dallas, okay, which is similar to Tucson. It's south, you know, we're right south of downtown. And what I learned to do is that scale thing. Remember I showed you that scale? So if you can scale down, you developers, small developers, you build small spaces that you can get a high price per square foot, but the dollar amount is still low. So I'm doing stuff over in South Dallas right now where there hadn't been any development in 70 years. There's been no development in 70 years. And we're filling up a building as fast as we can rent it because the spaces are 250 to 700 square feet. So see, we could make it work, and there's no subsidy, and it's being financed at a regular bank, because we were able to scale that space down. Now the key to scaling it down is to finish out the capital costs going in and the way you manage it. So we can talk more about that at a different time, but that's how I believe you curve. We can't stop progress in that gentrification, but you can make it more gentle. But you have to have a base of small developers and entrepreneurs that make that happen.
Hello?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I appreciate the robust comments. Coming from the standpoint of a soon to be a little over 25 plus number of years, African-American male from the San Francisco Bay Area that saw over a period of time the gentrification. I fully get the heart of Shay's comment as well as Monty's comment of the gentrification. I think the other elephant in the room, as it were, is that in the community, those who live there may have a barrier of thinking, how can we do this to where we are able to maintain the validity and fidelity of the neighborhood? Yes, there may be some things that encroach in. That's on one part. The second part, with all due respect, has to come from the powers that be it the city planners, all that says, okay, when are we going to make a change that maintains a neighborhood's fidelity so that we do not continue to displace individuals and or families under the guise of progress? As well, similar that when new construction goes up in some locations, some of the set asides are to say, 10% of the units below market rate, accessible, et cetera, et cetera. Some of us on this call know what that really looks like, but actually having more meat to the conversation of it. I know that may be slightly controversial, but if we're really talking small scale incremental development, it's a two-way street, in my opinion, both for the community and the powers that be that may or may not make a decision for a community without full information.
Yeah, totally, Bobby. Yeah, one of the slides that I presented earlier said you got to have that ecosystem built by the powers that be. It's got to be intentional. This is an intentional. That's where guys like Neil come in that do this work, and Corky and his planning. I mean, it has to be an intentional. And I think that sometimes you can cause intentional things to happen just by not letting, like, big developers do super blocks. So if you keep the platting into small lots, it's going to be smaller. But if you allow a developer to come in and do a super block, they can come in and just wipe out a whole neighborhood in a matter of, a year. So there's things that you can do. You have to be intentional. That has to be front and center. And I'm with you totally on this. But what you're doing is the right thing, and talking about it and planning it and looking at what the numbers do, like Neil showed earlier, how powerful the numbers can be small, because it's all about the money for everybody, right? It's all about the money for the powers that be. They need money to pay for sewer and streets and stuff. And so if we can show them that this is a better way than gentrifying the neighborhood, everybody's got to be happier.
I do agree with that. I think also the piece of that money that's missing from the equation, similar to what Shay was indicating, the pictures that tell a story. That in many of the meetings that I've seen take place over the years, speaking to development, this, that, the other, that human factor is not there in the forefront. It's there as an after effect almost of, let's making sure there's green areas, this, that, the other. But there's true value to that community connection. That's just what putting out there.
I'd like to show you really quickly the power of small. I'm gonna pull up a video from YouTube. This is on the benefits of smart growth, and the presenter at this point in the video is Chris Nelson. He's a professor here at the University of Arizona, and I think that this is a really powerful slide that shows you what the power of small is. You're looking at lot sizes, and they're revenue less their cost. So, you know, what is the kind of revenue apportioned to their life cycle that pretty much all of these lots are bringing in the same amount of city revenue relative apportioned to their life cycle, right? But how much does it cost to provide these sewer and water services to different lot sizes? And there's a break point around the 0.38 acres where you see that the small lots are actually subsidizing the large lots. So what Neil was talking about earlier is you've got these larger lot types, and there's really a hard thresholds to entering the market. It's the power of the small lot that actually it's kind of an inequitable way of spreading the costs and the benefits to properties. So that's just my bit on the power of small.
I could
I
add,
just read a quick calculation. You generally have 6,500 square foot lots in South Tucson. And according to that chart, so you'd be at like 0.15. So on that table you just showed, you're like well
Right.
within a good range. Your lot sizes tend to be, I mean, how that interacts with other, you know, development types is yet to be explored. But just to throw that out there, that meets that table, the low end of that table. Hey, I have a response to these gentrification questions from Josefina and Bobby. You mentioned it as well. I was here in Portland. We went through a recent single-family zoning update to allow 4 units everywhere that there's a single dwelling zone. So that's like 84% of our city. It's kind of crazy to be in a major American city and know that 84% of your city is zoned for single family only. I didn't realize that. You know, it felt dense and big to me when I moved here 8 years ago, but it's surprisingly rural in that regards, that it's, you know, largely single family. And I hope I'm not jumping the shark here, but and then there's also a statewide up zone that requires that single family zones, you know, allow, if you're a 10,000 person or less city, you could allow duplexes everywhere. If you're 10,000 or more, you allow fourplexes everywhere that there's single family zoning. So that's, Portland was ahead of the game doing that. And then the state requirement, the House Bill 2001 required that all cities comply with this. So anyway, what we learned in modeling these different unit types was that single family zoning, so single family houses should be considered a luxury housing type, right? And then the other housing types sort of come in at workforce levels. And so that was really useful in addressing these different affordability levels. So there was, you know, a single family house being built today in today's prices were coming in at like 250, 300% of the median income of Portland. That's insane. And people were wondering why they're getting priced out of neighborhoods, right? So now that things have opened up a little bit, there's more unit types available. We're expecting more workforce housing level unit types to be brought online, anywhere from 120 to 80% AMI. And there is, I worked on a deeper affordability bonus, which looked at how can we get below 80 to 60% AMI, affordable home ownership, people that are coming out of affordable renter units and want to buy now. Is there anything affordable for them to buy? And then so modeling some different unit types, we found that 6 units, a 6plex, can reach those sorts of deeper affordability, anywhere from 60 to 80% AMI. That being coupled with the amount of subsidy that is typically allowed or typically applied here in Portland, right? So that's hugely important, and because 84% of our city is now opened up to 60 to 80% affordable home ownership. And so I think exploring different unit types, exploring different options, and not only relying upon a single family approach, one size fits all, can do a huge, it can take you a long way in terms of gentrification.
So we have time for one more question for anyone who hasn't spoken up already, you're welcome. Bobby, I see we have your hand raised, and we can get to your question or your point
No,
later
No,
in the presentation.
it didn't come. It didn't turn off. My question was answered. Thank you much.
Okay, cool. Yeah, question, one more question, and then we're gonna switch gears. My genius plan was for everybody to commingle between our small scale developers and the work that we're doing in South Tucson so that we can all learn about what it is that we're doing. So we're gonna start that in just a couple minutes. I've got one thing I wanna share on here, but if anybody else has another question, you're free to ask.
If nobody does, I just have one thing to say about the small developers and the entrepreneurs. It may have been to what Shay was talking about a minute ago. It's like the money, how do you get the money? And it'd be a lot cheaper for cities to help finance small developers and entrepreneurs, not giveaways, with cheap money. All us small developers and entrepreneurs need is cheap money. We need cheap equity and good loans, especially in areas where the appraisals are not up. And in South Bend, we're seeing the city fund, like the banks fund 50%, the cities are funding 40%, and the developer only has to come up with 10%. And it's loan, it's no giveaways. And so I think the giveaways don't work as good to me, but cheap money is what we need. If we can get cheap money, and baby boomers and all over the country have a lot of money right now, and they're looking for ways to leave a legacy. So I'm not thinking that you got to get it all from the cities, because most of our cities don't have the money. But that's something that should be looked at and thought about early. Go out into the community, have your mayor start talking to the city about any of you baby boomers out there want to fund any of our small developers, and we can show you how to do it.
This is Corky. I should point out that there is a City of Tucson Industrial Development Authority and the Pima County Industrial Development Authority. And both of those entities are semi-private, semi-public, but their main charge is to provide cheap money. And they, at least in my opinion, have not been enough of a player in trying to deal with the issues that we've been talking about on this call.
And Corky,
okay, that's good to know. Danny Nee of the CIC has met with Monte before. We've done other meetings, and they're going to be. They actually provided funding for our boot camp and our workshop last year. But they are someone that we want to work with in creating the banks. I'll go ahead and transition now. Monty, you had one point, and then I want to transition.
A lot of the times those entities end up becoming more like banks, and they end up with their underwriting is just as tough as a bank, and that's where they won't work, because they have to. We're dealing with that exact same thing in South Bend right now, and we have in Dallas too. So they have to. If the thing is if you loan money on a project and it fails, you take it back and resell it to the next entrepreneur. You never lose money. You only lose money if you liquidate. If you turn around and sell it again, you can always get your money back, because somebody will take it if you'll finance it for high enough. Some entrepreneur, and I've helped other entrepreneurs finance things, many over the years, none of them go bad. Because once these people get a hold of a piece of property, they don't let it go. So
cool. So to let you know what's going on, we're working with the city of South Tucson up until roughly about June. And this is one of the few events where we're involving the public. Most of the work is going to be done with the planners, and as we look at the code, et cetera. Tomorrow, there's an event that you are welcome to join by RSVPing one of us here. I can put my email in the chat. Tomorrow, we've got an introduction to we're doing a market analysis for incremental development starting tomorrow at 10 a.m. So if you've got the time and availability, you can RSVP me, and you can participate in that. Sharon Woods of Land Use USA is going to be checking this out. And let me see, I got to unshare and reshare. And then to know more about the activities that we're doing in general with our small scale development group, you can follow us online on Facebook. We have a group here. It's called the Tucson Small Scale, and it's kind of the local cohort that kind of ties all this stuff together. So with that, that's the end of the stress test. I hope you'll stick around. We're here to start talking with the people who are in our workshop back in October 2020. They participated in a one day, 8-hour intensive workshop learning, getting fire hosed with the information on what it takes to become a small scale developer. At this point, in late April, people who sign up for the boot camp will learn how to build their projects, their projects will get strengthened that they bring, and will help them build pitch packages that they can take to the banks to get the lending. So Monte will be presenting again on that right here. And I have a slide deck that I will go through. I'll give you a quick shot of it right now. But we did a showcase after our workshop where we got to see who's working on what. And let me see. So, okay. We had I believe 6 or 7 people participate in our showcase. Let's see, can I advance? Shay, who's with us here, she has a project. We've got something going on in Flowing Wells that is a kind of like a micro village up in the Flowing Wells area. We had our own community land trust, Piglet, was participating in the project, showing us what they're doing. They're farther along in their robustness and existing projects. We have the Splinter Collective, which is a super cool spot in the downtown area. Julie Tainter is working on a pocket neighborhood in Oro Valley. And Bobby, who's on the phone here, he's got a project called 3 Little Birds. And his target tenant is people with disabilities and who are part of the LGBTQ community. And correct me if I'm wrong there, Bobby. And then we also have the Tucson Community Land Trust. Josefina Cardenas, who is on this call, was one of our presenters. And I think that's it. So we can go over more of this stuff later, but now I'm going to turn it back over to Monte.
You got to give me the screen again.
Yeah, come on. There we go. Go ahead.
Hey. Wait a minute. Let me go find it. Hold on just a second. Sorry.
No problem. Take your time.
I lost something. Okay. Okay, can you see that? Can y'all see that?
Yep.
Hello? Anybody out there?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, good. Okay. We're going to talk about the Tucson boot camp coming up in April, just a little ways away, and what you can expect. So this is just an introduction, and then we're going to be able to talk for a while. Just going to be able to throw any question you want at me, or do whatever you want, so we can talk to you. But so this is what it's about. Basically, putting your ducks in a row. You know, structuring your business. You know, figuring out your own flywheel. We'll talk about that in a minute. Analyzing a particular project. You know, preparing a pitch package. You know, sometimes you can not have anything, and if you put together the right package, you can really become attractive. And I don't know about you, but I would rather attract capital. I would rather attract good tenants than to have to promote so hard to get them. And so this is going to be 11 weeks of online coaching, learning, and homework is what it's going to be. And so The basics are this: introduction to structuring your building program. What is your project? It's going to be an overview of the course, the participant introductions. How much rent can you generate? Finding people and creating your building program. How are you going to pay for your building? Structuring your organization and deal. In fact, how can you do this as a business? How many of you would like to do this as a business instead of just doing it on the side? So what is allowed to be built on the site? We'll talk about that today earlier, reading zoning and or how to hire an architect that can read the zoning for you, how to design a livable building within a buildable area. I mean, the design of a building, you know, Nike spends billions of dollars designing a shoe, okay, not just for comfort, but the way it looks. And the same thing, you can get a lot more rent on a well-designed building. And I'm not talking about the gold package or the McMansion. I'm talking about a sleek, well-designed building. Performance in the financing. I mean, with 1 or 2 pages, the right performa, okay, in the right, right performer in the right rent roll and the couple of different things, you can get a loan with just a couple of 3 pages. And we want to show you how to do that. And generating a performance, multi-year cash flow, what levers you can pull on your performance. What can you do to make it work? How can you constantly be looking at it? Being scrappy in a rehab market, how to do that. Feed them what they eat. In other words, tell your story, your project to people in the way that they can understand it. Don't go to the bank, with things that they don't understand. You got to learn what it's like to stand in their shoes, or to stand in the shoes of an investor, or stand in the shoes of a tenant. So you want to feed them what they eat, and how to assemble your pitch package. So here's the schedule. Here's the way it's going to be. Session 1 on April 20th. And it's going to be it's 4 hours. And then session 2 is April 27th. It's 3 hours. You can see you're going to have a week off for homework. You're going to have homework to do in between, because there's certain things that you have to do to move from one step to the other. And then on May 11th, we're going to have a small group review of the homework for a couple hours. May 18th, the content, May 25th, the same. A week off for homework. Week 7, faculty one-on-ones. You're going to have faculty. You're going to have one-on-ones with all of our faculty. In June, you're going to have small group presentations, dry run. And then we're going to end with final presentations. And hopefully at that point, you'll have a pitch package. You'll be ready to go to raise money for your project. So the registration is like this. Early bird registration, it's $499. And we're going to know each other. By the time this 11 weeks is through, we're going to all know each other a whole lot better. We're going to understand what kind of issues you've got, what kind of finances and zoning and problems that you got getting your project done. After that, it goes up to $549, and last minute registration is $599. Structuring your business. One of the things that we see people do all the time is they don't have a good real estate lawyer, or they don't have their entity set up. And I'm not talking about having a lawyer that does family law or divorces or got you out of jail. You're talking about a real estate lawyer, okay? A transaction lawyer. You can't do this business without one. You can try, but you're gonna end up in trouble sooner or later unless you have that. You got to have a strong team. The stronger your team is, the lower your risk is. You got to have the attorney, you got to have a good designer that can design it at the level you need it. If you got an architect who's giving you a $30,000 fee to do a little bitty tiny building, you got the wrong architect. Okay.
Mañana el viernes voy con la señora. Llegó ahí la voy a recoger y te la llevo.
Hello? Can y'all hear that? Did y'all hear? Is that okay? So you got to have a good drywaller and good plumber, especially good, plumbers and air conditioning. You got to have, you got to know who tenants are. You got to know where to go to cultivate your business. And this is the flywheel. This is a part of the flywheel that we're going to talk more about And so who makes the flywheel go round? Okay, who makes this go round in this business here? This is who makes it go round: architects, designers, engineers, construction people, marketing people, leasing agents, make-ready people, property managers, handy maintenance people, bookkeepers, communities, CPAs, attorneys, lenders, investors. And look where the incremental developer is. Look where the incremental developer is in the middle. This is not an org chart like this, where the incremental developers are up here with vice presidents and all. I mean, you're in the middle of everything. As an incremental developer, you've got to be nearly a type of person that knows a little bit about everything. And what we try to do, and we'll show you that in a minute, is how do you get into the flywheel where you can make a living? We'll talk about that in just a second. And we'll talk a whole lot more about it in the boot camp. So the early team, here we talk about it again, the early team's an attorney, an accountant, a handyman that can help you, or handy woman can help you, a good architect or designer, a real estate agent, or a property manager. Unless you're one of these people. Hopefully you may be one of these people. And a lot of times what I'll do early on in a project is hire people by the hour. Don't give me a big fat architect's contract. I want an architect to come help me read the zoning code. I'm going to pay you by the hour. Then you go away. Or help me do a sketch. You know, I want to hire an attorney just to learn what I got to do to read loan documents, to understand title transfers. I'm going to hire you by the hour very quickly, and then you go away. I don't want a big fat contract with you. So figuring out your flywheel. So this is one of the most interesting things here that's helped me be in this business. I'm in this business full time and have been for 30 years. And here's why. I was a real estate agent. I was a guy that went around and leased you the retail space. And then I became a property manager. Okay. And then I became a developer and contractor. So see in the red area, I make money off of other people. So I go lease space for other people too. I would develop space for other people, and then I would do my own. So what I wanted to do is I want to get in the flywheel. I want to get in the flywheel of my neighborhood. I want to, if I'm an architect, I don't want to work on big hotels and across the country. I want to start helping people redesign their storefronts in my neighborhood. See, while I'm redesigning storefronts in my neighborhood, I'm making my neighborhood better. I'm making my development better when I do my development. See, you could be a handy person and get into the flywheel here, or a make-ready person, or a cleaning person. So you could start off as that and get into the flywheel and learn how to do this business. I know a cleaning lady, the lady that I showed you earlier in my slides is a cleaning lady who is now a property owner. She got into the flywheel. She does cleaning for all kinds of people in the neighborhood. Now she's starting to buy properties. Okay, we want to show you how to get in there where you can make a living at this, where you can do it full time. So there's no right answer, okay? You just have to think like this small incremental developer. We're going to teach you how to analyze a particular product. I mean, what's legal? I mean, you want to start off in this business with something you can do by right, but learning how to read the zoning code or know who to find that can do that for you, how to find the right kind of lots. You may find a beautiful piece of land somewhere, but its zoning is so messed up, you couldn't do anything on it for right now, for a long time. And so you don't want to start there. So what uses are permittable or by right, is if you will. So imagine projects that are needed like this. I mean, these skinny little houses produce a lot, duplexes, carts on the corner, street markets. So you want to run the numbers. You want to estimate your net operating income. The net operating income, or the NOI, is the most important number in valuing an income producing project. You want to estimate your total cost. You want to interview banks. You want to know banks before you need them. If you've waited to go to a bank when you need them, you've gone too late. It's like getting pre-qualified for buying a house. You want to go early. You want to find out what the banker feels like. You remember, feed them what they eat. You want to find out, what does the banker think like? What is he looking for? How much down payment is he wanting? What is your net worth got to be like? Or what is your how much cash do you have to raise? Okay, so we're going to look at something real quick with this page right here. This one little page right here, I can start a project and get a loan. And I used to call it a walking pro forma. This would be something I would just normally do. I'm walking down the street and I see a little duplex. And I immediately go, okay, what can you rent duplexes for? Well, I can rent a duplex over here for $1,200 a piece for each side at $2,400 a month. Okay. And then from there, I can begin to build my pro forma, and I'm constantly running pro formas all the time. So in this case here, the pro forma shows that I can get $28,000 a year. And I know that operating expenses, because I've been working in my farm, I know that expenses are going to run me, taxes, insurance, and maintenance are going to run me about $10,000. And then I know I'm going to have a little bit of a vacancy factor, because the bank's going to want that. Even in a hot area, they're going to want a vacancy factor. So if I have the income minus the expenses, the net operating income, that number right there, that 16,700, that is how your building is valued. It's not like houses, where houses are valued on the price per square foot. It's valued on its income. And so if you acquired this property here for $30,000 and you put $230,000 in it, and you had $58,000 in soft costs, you've got a total cost of $322,000. And the bank's probably got to tell you, we want 25% down. So you know what you've got to go raise. You've got to come up with $80,000. And then if you get a loan for the balance of $241,000, then you understand what your monthly payment is, which is $1,154, or annually it's $13,000. And then in this case here, if you take the $16,000 net operating income minus the debt service, you have a cash flow of $2,800. This particular deal is not that good. It's 4% cash on cash return, but it may be what you see in some of the tougher areas in Tucson, because the rents are potentially go up in the future. So if you can get financing, you still may want to do this deal here. Now, what's most important to the bankers is this debt service coverage ratio. And what that 1.21 is that is saying that I'm getting 21% more rents. Okay, my income is 16,704 and my debt service is 13,848. So if you take 13,848 times 1.21, it equals 16,704. So I'm getting, for every dollar I take in, I'm getting for every dollar I take in, or for every dollar I have in debt, I'm getting $1.21 in income. And banks typically want at least 1.2, 1.3, even more, 1.5 or more. See, they want you to get more. And we're going to show you how to do that. So if the numbers don't work, then you can't build the building. Okay. So how does it fit into the flywheel? How do you keep this thing going? Remember opportunity cost. If you build something that doesn't make money, or you use all your money on too big a project, you may not be able to do another project. So you don't want to, a lot of our people build too big a project and they can't build another one. So let's say you get an old building, and you're starting to work on it. You can't even see it. You want to clean it up first. You want to clean, or clean your site up so you can see it. You want to plant trees and flowers, and you want to have maybe dog runs or petting zoos on the land, or a pop-up market, in the meantime. So you could clean something up that's not quite ready to be occupied. You could do temporary things to it. If the numbers do work, what are you allowed, on a napkin? Okay, on a napkin, what are you allowed to put in the building? How many units can be there? How big can the building be? How many stories? How much open space do you need? How many parking spaces do you need? With this information, you'll be able to quickly tell whether it's worth it or not. In pitching your project, we're going to teach you what goes in the package. If you don't know what goes in the package, or you could actually put too much into the package and just wear your banker out. Remember, you've got to take your package to a loan officer the loan officer has to take that package to a board of directors. So you can imagine your loan officer's taking your package that's too complicated to a group of usually men sitting around a board table that are just pounding them with question after question after question. And finally, the loan officer just gives up and they turn it down. So you want to make a loan package simple enough where your loan officer can take it and pitch it to the board so you can get your loan done. And you got to understand what level of detail that you need for that to do that. And you want to get something, in writing and you want to get started. So the project essentials of a pitch package, here's what they are: the property, the project, the plans, the sources of your funds, the source where you got to get the money from, the bank, from your investors, from yourself, from your friends, from your family, and then what you're going to use those funds for, and what's the neighborhood like, and then what's the schedule, what's the unit schedule. That's the I've got 3 2-bedrooms, 4 1-bedrooms, and 2 retail spaces. The unit schedule. They ask what you're asking the bank for. I'm asking you for this, and the team. Who's on your team? If you're weak, if you're just getting started right now, you want to have a good team. You want to have a good architect. You might want to have you got a good contractor on your team. You got good plumbers, you got a good drywallers, that everybody knows in town. And so we're gonna practice presenting. And I'm gonna just run through a really quick what a project package looks like. The project name in a picture. This is the property. See, it's on a map, and here's a little bit about the property. It's a building in downtown, whatever it is. And then here's the land. Here's what the property looks like, and you're going to get 2 tenants or 3 tenants. Okay, this may be a site sketch and with details on it, and then you're going to have your floor plans here, and then your unit schedule, acquisition cost, improvement cost, and soft cost. What are your total project costs? If you go to the bank and you don't have all the soft cost in and carrying cost, like how are you going to carry this during the construction with interest, and architect's fees and mowing the lot and paying taxes and insurance? They're not going to loan it to you. And then this is describing your equity. So you may can only get a 65% loan. So you got to go raise 35%. And then here's your net operating income and your annual debt service, your cash on cash return, your debt service coverage. This is the project performance. This right here, this page, this is one of those pages right here that just tells you everything right here. And then the loan, what it is, your rate, amortization, the term. On a commercial loan, you don't get a 20-year or 30-year loan. You get a 5-year loan or 7-year loan or 3 years sometimes. They'll amortize it over longer periods, but it's due in a short amount of time. And what do you got to do? How do you do that? And what do you got to do when that loan expires? And your equity, principal return. What kind of deal do you make with your partners? Do you borrow the money from your partners? Do you make them a partner? What kind of LLC do you put together? And what you're going to do long term, when you're going to get out of it, because there has to be an end to all this. If you're going to just keep it and rent it forever, if you're going to sell it. See, a lot of people in the beginning think that you're going to buy a piece of property, you're going to fix it up, and you're going to rent it forever, but they don't have any money to do the next project, so they may have to sell the project. So we're going to talk about all those things, what you're going to do, and how do you keep your business going. So with that, that's a little bit about what you're going to learn in the 11 weeks. It's a lot. We used to do this. We used to start these before COVID. We used to start these on a Friday night, and we would go Friday night, 12 hours on Saturday, and usually 6 hours on Sunday, and then we'd be done. I think that post COVID, we've learned how to do this over time. It'll give you time in between the sessions, and when you come out of this class, you should be able to have a pitch package. You should be able to go out and raise money with investors. You should be able to go to banks. Some of you out there I know are already doing projects. You can just fine tune your skills by coming to our boot camp. We'll have, I'll be at the boot camp, but we'll also have lots of other members of our faculty will be there, all kinds of specialists for each sections of the presentations. So with that, Ryan, I'm here to answer any questions. We can, the floor is open for you guys you can ask me anything you want. We can talk till Ryan says we're done.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Monty. I wonder if the people that attended the workshop that also shared projects in the showcase would like to talk about their projects at all. I can bring up your slides if you'd like to. Otherwise, the floor is open for you to ask Monty questions about the boot camp.
If I may ask,
Yes, ma'am.
I'm wondering about the homework. How much time do you estimate that it will be taking us? Because being so involved in everything that goes on, I want to make sure that I'm going to dedicate my time with the homework.
Well, the homework's, each week's going to be a different thing. But if you start the week and you start the process and you don't have a property, you're going to, that could be your first week is finding a property. And you may not have a property that you can buy right now, but you want to find something that you can use as your model. You want to find something. Most of the homework's going to be, it's not going to be that hard. It may be to go find an attorney, go find a real estate attorney. It may be to interview banks. It may be to begin to talk about, how do you find an investor, for instance? Let's say you're somebody like I was. My mom was a telephone operator, one of those long distance operators. My dad was a carpenter. We didn't know people with money. I mean, we just didn't know people. And so I had to learn how to go find people with money. So who do you ask? I went and asked one of my bankers. I said, do you know people in the bank that have a lot of money in the bank? He goes, well, yeah, I do, but I can't give you that list. And I said, well, would you introduce me to some? He goes, well, yeah, I'll introduce you. Then another time I asked a CPA, do you know people that would want to invest in real estate in this town that have money? Well, the CPA knew people that had a lot of money. And he introduced me to one of my biggest investors who's still my investor today, who's become a very close friend now. So how do you, that may be what you might have to do on homework. You may have to go out and find, get some maps, pull some maps down. I think that the homework's not going to be that hard. You just got to go do it each time in between. It won't be that hard. It may be that we tell you to go interview 2 bankers, and you may even can interview them over the phone.
Can I ask a question, Monty?
Thank
Sure.
you.
Sorry, I waved at you and I clapped my
Oh,
hands.
sorry, I didn't see it. I'm sorry, Valerie. Go
That's
ahead.
okay. No, I have. So, oh man, I have a big question for you. I think I'm a licensed architect and realtor in Tucson, and in between wanting to jump off the cliff with this stuff, I have to continue working, and so it's a little hard for me to figure out the timing with all this stuff. Like the cost of lots in the neighborhoods I want to work in is really freaking high. Like some of the lots are upwards at close to $200,000 just for the lot. So it seems like there's a really precarious timing that has to happen between like getting financing to buy it, to purchase a lot, and then getting the plans drawn up and being able to go to the bank for the construction costs. Those timelines don't seem to quite align with how fast I can personally work. And I'm struggling with that, I guess.
You've got to, I mean, just like if you're going to go buy a house today in a hot market, you got to be pre-qualified or nobody's going to take your contract. Nobody's going to take it. So what you have to do, if you're looking at an area, you got to go to the bank and you got to talk to the bank, get your financials to the bank, and you got to talk to your equity sources, and you got to be able to move quick. When one of those lots, I mean, you got to be ready quick. That's not the way we normally do it. And it's not the way I did it either, Valerie. I had to learn the hard way, but you're at the bank and you've already made a relationship with the bank. You got to know them. They're telling you, I'm going to make you a 65% loan. You got to go raise 35%. Now you know what to do. Now you go talk to your investors. You find the money, You get everything set up, you're ready to go with the right thing. You have your LLC ready. Your attorney can read the documents quickly. You can do your due diligence. So you got to get those things in order first. Doesn't do any good to go out and look for property right now if you don't have the money side. And you're not going to have a firm commitment. Okay, the banks are not going to give you a firm commitment till you get the property in, but they can give you a soft commitment. Is Valerie, this is the kind of business we can do with you. We can do up to 800,000 with 35% down. We'll give you 5% interest, a 20-year amortization, 5-year note. This is what we give you if the deal underwrites and if it appraises. So those are the things you do while you're under contract in that short period. Because in a hot market, the sellers are not going to give you a long period on the contract to close on a deal.
Yeah. So what do you do in the event that you have a piece of property? How do you finance yourself for the months that it takes to get the architectural plans approved and through the county and everything like that?
You got to be prepared with some of those soft costs up front. And if you don't have those soft costs, then you may, let's just say that just generally speaking, I'm going to give you kind of a number that would cost to just put the earnest money down, get enough drawings to get to the bank, maybe an environmental, those kind of things. You're going to need roughly $30,000 or so, 25, 30, maybe up to 50,000, depending on what it is. You got to have that money and be willing to put it up at risk. If you don't close, it's gone. So you might, if you're borrowing that money, that's got to probably be a family or a friend borrow if you don't have that money. And you're going to have to make a deal with them, some kind of deal. Either you're borrowing it and you'll pay it back, or I'm going to give you a bigger piece of the deal if I get it through. So maybe they
can you
pay it back.
Can you describe the tri-party agreement?
So the tri-party agreement is where you, Valerie, we'll take you as Valerie, you're the small developer and you've gone to the bank and the banker said 65%, we'll give you 65. So you've got 5%. Let's just say that you've got 5%.
But this is what you said. This is like a pre-qualification process where you've got like an idea of the size and type of property you want and the size and type of project, but there's nothing firm yet.
Right.
Okay.
So you might have the investor comes along and the investor's a little bit nervous. We've been able to have a tri-party agreement where the investor puts the money in the bank. Okay. And the bank distributes all the money out to you. So the bank's got all the money. So they're controlling all the money. And in that situation like that, the banks like it because they've got all the money ready to go. They're controlling. If you don't build the project to the specs, then they don't give you any of the money. So also the investor might have a little safer situation in case of foreclosure. They're in with the bank. So they come in and maybe make the payments until they can resell it again. So the tri-party is a little bit complicated, Ryan. If you don't have like a city, I mean, it's harder if we can talk more about that, Valerie. We'll learn more about that at the boot camp. We'll be able to spend more time with you. And anybody that's needing something that's a little complicated like that, I'm giving Tucson a little extra time talking about individual projects offline. And if you sign up for the boot camp, we'll make sure that you get a little extra time with that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Shay, do you want to share your project?
Oh, yeah, I have to do it quickly. I have to leave pretty soon. But yeah, I'm sure I'd be happy to. So.
Yeah, show us what you got, Shay. I remember last time.
Yeah, I think you saw it already. But yeah, I have a property that's it's pretty much ready to go. What's been hindering me for the past few years is that I'm no longer a W-2 employee. I'm self-employed. So coming up this year, once I file my taxes, I'll have 2 years under my belt with the LLC, my own LLC. So I'm hoping that this will start opening me up to financing again. But I am nervous about it because, it's still, a relatively new business. But
Then
pretty much everything
if you
is
go to the bank, if you interview the bankers and stuff, then you can, they're going to tell you where you're weak and where where you got to prop yourself up. But that way you'll know before you go out there into the market.
Yeah. So, Ryan, if you just want to flip through to like maybe the site plan or the, basically, this project is in Blue Moon. This is one of the areas I'm kind of thinking about my farm being, but but it's, again, I'm nervous about any of these neighborhoods so close to downtown because, again, just the difficulty of competing in the market right now, it is insane. Like, I don't know realistically how much more I can do. I'm actually more interested in looking at the south side because there's a lot of vacant land, a lot of vacant properties, and the market just isn't as competitive. And I also own a home down here in the south side. I'm looking right now a lot at South Park where I'm at, but this lot, because I already own it and I have side control, it's a perfect opportunity to put a little casita in the back. I have some zoning issues with setbacks, but all I have to do is get an agreement from my neighbor, who is also my aunt, my great aunt, and I should be able to get around those. So, I really don't foresee any zoning or site challenges. I confirmed with zoning that I thought my lot size was too small, but I'm actually just over the requirement for. So I'm good to go here with the zoning. Ryan, if you want to go to the next slide.
Right, Shay? Aren't you an architect?
Yeah, I'm a designer. Yeah, so I've got all that figured out. That part is not troubling me. Maybe Ryan, take it to the performa. I think that's kind of where I'm interested in, just kind of looking at maybe the numbers. What I'm hoping, or here, actually stop here on the floor plans. What I'm hoping to do is also to use this as a test project for, I really want this to be my own personal residence. I want to move back closer to downtown. And then build it up with the basement and put kind of all the major systems down there, including water storage for, I'd like this to be off the grid in terms of water. I mean, just looking at what's happening with Texas with all the water and power. I mean, well, that's where we're headed with the Southwest. I just don't see a future where we don't have water insecurity and where we don't have power insecurity. So for me, I really want this unit to be a test project for off the grid. And store most of those major systems below ground if I can. This lot has a few challenges because it's in a FEMA floodplain, so that might be tricky with the basement. But I think, again, there's ways around that with good design. With I think you just have to provide like some stormwater vents or things of that nature. And then Ryan, if you go to the next slide, yeah, there's some 3D views of this. Again, it's pretty small, pretty compact. It's really only about 1,000 interior square feet, but then with the outdoor spaces, it'll feel bigger than that. Yeah, if you go to the performa, I think that's what I'm really worried about. Honestly, I was conservative with the numbers. I feel like I put the construction price kind of on the high side just because I'm not sure with some of these sustainable systems. I'm worried, it's going to put me over, conventional construction costs. I'm estimating at around, I think, 150 a square foot. But I think, honestly, if I did a lot of the work myself, I think I could get that lower. I'm working with actually some owner builders, friends of mine right now, who they're cutting construction costs down to like 75 a square foot because they have family who are framers. And so again, I think there's ways to work with some of these costs and get them a little bit more, a little bit more in line, a little bit maybe less conservative. I think I could build this unit, in all honesty, for anywhere between 150 and 200,000, and especially if I phased certain parts of the project, like the solar panels. That could happen later. Just getting all the infrastructure in place so it's set up to do that, solar ready, but not necessarily investing in those big systems now. So yeah, so I think I could probably play with those numbers and get some of this a little bit more in line. But yeah, at the end of this March, I'm gonna go through get all my taxes and all that done so that I can hopefully show the banks that I've been able to maintain, you know, my income, you know, despite being self-employed, and that you know, that I'm able to qualify for this, you know, to build this. So
Think about this, Shay. You know, if you build this for yourself, even if it's not forever, so let's say that if you build this as a rental deal, this is a pretty slim deal here. It's going to be hard to get this one financed as a
Right.
rental. But if you go get an FHA loan, you know, you get 5% down, you know, 30-year mortgage, you know, that would be the way you can get this thing built.
yeah.
And then if you decided that you wanted to lease it as the market gets better and the rental rates get better, then you could also move out later on and go do it again somewhere else. In the very beginning in my career, I can't tell you how many FHA loans I got for myself built to build, because that's the only way I could do it. I didn't have enough money down payment wise to do it any other way. So I kept getting them and selling them, and some of them I rented, some of them I sold, and I just kept doing it over and over again for myself to live in. And I'd move in, you know, and sell it and move out, or rent it and move out. It was always, you may not want to do that, but that was the way I had to do it to get started. I couldn't get enough money otherwise. But
Yeah.
you can easily get it financed that way.
Hey, Monty, can you, we talk a little bit about the difference. Like, have you ever done one of these projects with just private investors and no banks? It's really tough to find banks right now that will loan on construction, on new construction.
Yeah, it's harder, and they want more money and they want more piece of the deal. The bank is still your best partner if you can get them to loan you money. But to you know, if you go to hard money lenders, I suggest you don't do that, because that's like 14% interest, 18, whatever it's, you know, those are scary. You got to be really careful with those. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying I never done it. And the reason why is because it costs too much. A banker is still my best partner. Okay. The banker's still your best partner because they're the cheapest. They're going to be the cheapest on interest. If you have
Plywood.
Yeah, bankers need to sell. They have to sell loans. It's just a matter of making it attractive to them. You got to figure out what they eat, feed them what they eat. If you're weak in credit or weak in cash or wherever you're weak, fill in your weaknesses with partners that can make those stronger. Now you'll have to give up. I can tell you this, in the very early days, I did deals basically where I only got 10% myself. I got the fees, you know, the brokerage fees, I got leasing fees, I got development fees. I only got 10% of the deal because I didn't have enough credit or money to get more than that in the deal. Later on that changed, but I was willing to do that to get the deals done. So you know, everything's going to cost you something. The other thing is, like, the most costly money I've ever been involved with is billionaires' capital. So these billionaires, the richer they are, the more gatekeepers they had, the more attorneys, the more CPAs. I like the guy or gal that's worth about, a good investor is somebody that's worth maybe 20, 30 million, 20 to 50 million, you know, 20, 15, 20, 50. That's not that rich anymore. I mean, it's sad to say, but that's not that, but there's a lot of baby boomers out there who just have a couple of $1 million in the bank, you know, that they've had, that they can, and they're a lot more than you think. I didn't realize it until my banker was telling me, you know, how many people had saved money and had cash. I mean, he didn't tell me who they were, right? That would be violating privacy, but there's a lot of people that have, and those kind of people are a lot better. They might loan you money at a lower interest, or because they like you, or because you're doing something good in the neighborhood. But it's really hard to get all cash investors to loan in your deal unless you pay a lot of interest.
So did you just say that a good investor is worth 20 or $30 million?
Well, I said versus a billionaire. You know, there's a lot of people out there in your city, in Tucson, I guarantee you, that are worth, you know, 10 to 30 million dollars. There's a lot of people in that category. You may not know them.
No, Sheree and I are running around in the wrong circles, I think.
Well, you remember, what did I say how did you find them? What did I say a minute ago?
Oh,
I
I-
can't.
Interview bankers.
Oh, interview bankers?
Ask your CPA, ask your attorneys, start asking around. Have you ever asked anybody?
I mean, I know they exist because Tucson has a ton of baby boomers. I mean, this is the people who have wealth in this community are the retired folks. I mean, and you go to these gated communities in the foothills and you're just like, man, there's a lot of wealth here. It's just hidden. It's just, where do we find these people? How do we meet them? You know, I think it's tricky, and most of them are seasonal. You know, they're only here for the winter. So how do we really get access to this group of people who I know exists here in Tucson?
Arizona is baby boomer paradise.
I think what it's being alluded to, but not alluded to, is that old acronym, not in my neighborhood, where the folks, it's similar, you know, Shay's example, the gated community, those are the folks who have the economic resources that are stocked away. Then it's that catch-22, because I've run into this already, of let me just donate this bag of clothes over here. But then when yes, the relationship's being cultivated, and it's then to say, okay, now this is the project we're working on for X, Y, and Z. And 9 times out of 10, you know, it comes back to, well, we don't want that in our neighborhood or those people. That's part of the stuff that the Tucson landscape has. That's part of the realities. Yeah, let me just leave it at that.
Okay, so we're talking about raising capital. Okay, listen carefully. Okay, you put your best voice on, you put your best suit on, you put the best package you can put together. Okay, that you can, and you go to your CPA, or you start hanging out, you go to the Chamber of Commerce meetings, you start meeting people, you start talking to your bankers, you start talking to your attorneys, and you say, do you know of somebody who might want to invest in my project in this area? And that's where my people come from. I mean, that's where they came from. Okay, I started off brokering real estate. So I'd be out there, I would go to the auctions back a long time ago, and I followed people around when they bid on buildings. And when they got the building, they bid it, and they got the bid. I went up to them and said, hey, would you hire me to lease your building and manage it? And one of the guys said, yeah, I'll hire you. You're the local guy. He was from California. He was a wealthy Californian who came to Texas to make some money and buy some real estate. I didn't know him before. I followed him. In fact, I didn't follow him around. He wasn't at the auction. His niece was at the auction. I followed her around because she was the one bidding on the building that I was following. So that's why farming, when we talk about farming, you're in the community, you're talking to people, you're asking people, you know, you show them, Shay, this is a beautiful project here. I mean, you're very skilled in your design. You're skilled. Your intellectual capital, okay, is high on the chart, in my opinion, from what I know about you so far. It's high. It's a good little project.
Thank you.
I mean, that's attractive. That's an attractive little project. And I think it will attract, if you start asking the right questions and you learn how to put the right package together, you'll become attractive. So you can go and promote yourself. You can go beg if you want to, Valerie. You can go do it the old-fashioned way. Go to the bankers and beg for a loan, or you can learn a different way. And that's what we will talk about in the boot camp. And I know if you hadn't done it, you hadn't done it. You don't know yet. At one point in my life, my dad told me. Here's what my dad told me. He was a carpenter. He said, "Monty, the rich get richer, and that's not us." And I didn't believe him that I couldn't do. He worked for the guys like me. My dad did. He worked for them. I said, "Why don't you ever do your own deals, Dad?" Because he said, "I don't have any money." And I said, "Well, there's got to be a way to get the money." And so until you start asking, you don't know. So it's just like anything else. If you were on a job interview, you'd put your best suit on, your best face. You go in, you put your resume out there, you try to it's the same thing. This is no different. And you may have to talk to 20 people. Okay, you can't give up after the first one, because I promise you, you're going to get told no. And the bankers are going to tell you no, and you're going to walk away and you're going to feel like crap, you know, because you're going to feel your feelings are going to get hurt. You're going to feel, you just got to go again, and you got to get better next time. This is hard, guys. This is the hard part. This is hard, but there's a better way to do it than begging bankers to give you money. And
so we provided training on the basics of what small scale development is last October. And now at the boot camp, we're helping people march their specific projects forward. We're doing this work in South Tucson to raise the barriers to small scale developers to do their work. And then our organization, Tucson Small Scale, is doing some of the homework to that end to kind of start those relationships and conversations and connections with the bankers. And we've been talking with the Federal Reserve, and you know, they regulate banks in our area. And so they kind of do their outreach, and they're trying to figure out what's happening locally in the community. And so we're hopeful that the kind of relationships that we cultivate there will increase the visibility of our small scale developers and their projects.
so okay, doing this is like anything else. You know, a lawyer practices law. A doctor practices medicine. Okay, this is a practice. We're always practicing. That's why we tell you to start small. You know, start with an FHA loan, start with something that you can do. Because Shay, once you build this, or Valerie, once you build, and somebody else out there, speak up too if you've got a project you want to share with us. Once you build that first one like this and you do it and you complete it and it's beautiful, that's gonna, a picture says 1,000 words. You know, one deal like that built says 1,000. And I don't care if it's a snow cone stand. If it's a beautiful snow cone stand with a really pretty benches outside, or a group of trailers parked in a food trailer park, you're going to start to stick out like a sore thumb. If you do the work, you get lucky. Do you guys believe in luck? Does anybody here believe in luck? I'd rather be lucky than good any day. And I'm really a lucky guy. You know what luck is? Hard work and opportunities crossing paths. That's luck. You put the work in, you get the package, you interview the banks, you start talking to CPAs and attorneys. How bad do you want it? How bad do you want it? If you don't want it very bad, you won't go talk to anybody. But if you want it as bad as I did, and my dad was telling me that it couldn't happen, that's what he told me. It wasn't going to happen. And each of us have our own places we start from, whether we're female or we're black, or we're brown or we're white, or we live on the wrong side of the tracks, or we, you know, wherever you are, you have to start from that. You know, the lower you start, the better you got to be. The lower you start, the better you got to be. And by the time, if you get good, you'll get, you know, you'll be better. If I said, Shay, you got to be better than me to get money. So you're going to work harder to be better than I am. And
Yeah,
you're going to stick out like a sore thumb. Banks are going to be begging you to loan you money in the future.
Thank you, Mark. That's encouraging. And yeah, I think that's already been my experience just trying to make it in the architecture industry. It's tough. It's competitive. We live in a very competitive, you know, society, and it's tough. It's tough. I feel like as a person of color, you have to be, you know, you have to work harder. It's just sad, but it's the truth. And, you know, and I, you know, and I think at the ask, my mom would always say, you know, if you ask, you know, you shall receive. Like, you don't know until you ask. So the worst that can happen is someone says no, and you just keep knocking on the doors. So thank you for that, Monte. I have to go pretty soon, but I want to say thank you to everybody, and thank you for everyone being on the call.
Good luck, Shay.
Thanks,
Good to see you, Shay.
How about our other small scale developers? Bobby, Josefina, Julie, anybody else want to present their project?
Mother, I'll defer to you unless you want me to go first.
You can go first. Okay.
Let's see. Yes, I'll do the quick recap. I see what time it is. Potential Developability has been working towards our incremental development of one of the two properties that we pitched at our last time together. One property was swooped from underneath us after much paperwork both with our legal team and our investors. So that kind of put a damper, yet then we re-geared and what have you. So we are still pushing forward. Similar to some of the other comments that have been made, it's that ebb and flow, especially in terms of real estate with folks who are migrating into Arizona and specifically the Southern Arizona region. So balancing all of that. And then also the other piece from our organizational standpoint, we did a slight shift because of the COVID related matters of making sure our members were okay. And so put part of the development on hold for a little bit, but now we are back to where things are rocking and rolling in a nutshell.
All right. Well, Bobby, I'm glad you believe in luck. So make it happen.
Oh yes, the creator gives that to us all in a wonderful way. I'm sitting in my office right now going through stuff, but yes. And I have no sense of humor left whatsoever. So, you know,
stay lighthearted.
Right.
Stay lighthearted in this business, you know.
Yes. And it is true that have developed a thick skin when it comes to some of the potential investment pieces and or financial institutions working with their respective needs and requirements. And so it is a process.
Yeah. All right.
I'll chime in. This is Julie. After I spoke to you, Monty, after that October meeting, I kind of went back and shifted strategies and changed the focus. So I'm working on revamping it all and putting it back together. And I'm very much looking forward to the boot camp because I think this will help me really fine tune it. In the meantime, we've created our first tiny house plan, actually tiny house on wheels, getting ready to start building that. We found an investor that's going to fund 3 of those builds and we're starting there and then going to broaden the scope once we kind of get our feet wet.
Okay. You backed up and starting smaller.
Yes, I took your advice because, I had this beautiful living community pocket neighborhood in my head, but at the end of the day, reality check. And we're going to scale it back and start a little bit smaller. We're going to start with the tiny houses on wheels. I'm right now looking for a piece of land where we could do 6 to 12 smaller homes, 1,100 square feet. And we still want to build out a recycled materials and really build a truly affordable, but like Shea, with some of those, that ability to live off the grid if you choose to. So we're really going back and fine tuning things, honestly.
So last year ago in South Bend, Julie, it reminds me of something. A lady by the name of Consuela came to me with a $30 million project, a small developer. And the only thing she had ever done, she was in the tax business. And the only thing, she had bought some rental properties. She owned a few rental properties. And when I told her it was unrealistic to build her $30 million project, she and her mom and her husband left embarrassed and mad at me. Okay, very mad at me. The next day I called her on the phone and I said, look, I want to see you build that property one day. I want to see you do that. The fastest way to get there is to start with something small. She got herself a 2,500 square foot medical building a year ago, 1 year ago. And she was going to rent it to a single tenant. And I talked her into renting it to 15 small tenants. And so she took a property that she bought for around $50,000 and she turned it by doing the small. If she would have had a single tenant, it would have been worth about $175,000. And by putting the small tenants in there, it was worth $400,000. And she just finished it. And it's beautiful. So in 1 year, she went from doing residential units to doing commercial development. And now she's the talk of the town. And it's not the biggest project, but she did it so well. It's beautiful. And I couldn't believe it. In fact, I have some photos of it. It's kind of hard for me. When it'd probably be hard, but it was just so well done. And she can't believe it now. Her confidence level of getting the one deal done, her confidence level is way up here now. I mean, she could conquer anything now.
Yeah.
She may never want to build that $30 million project anymore because this one's so profitable and a lot less risk. And her quality of life, because it's a lot easier. Her quality of life, and her husband and her mother are so glad because she didn't blow all their money. She was going to put everything they had on the line. She would have never been able to get the $30 million deal done. She would have never been able to get it done. And so I tell all of you this is you want to practice, you need to get a deal done. Do one little house, one little strip center. If it's too expensive close to downtown Tucson, go a little further south, go a little further west, a little further east. Find a deal. Don't be so one track single-minded too that you're only looking for, cottages. Maybe you're looking for an old gas station that you can turn into a fruit market, or a gas station you're going to turn into a taco stand. It doesn't have to, it could be an old strip center that an old grocery store space that you can divide up like I did with the DeSoto Marketplace. Maybe in the beginning, you don't even have walls. You just have spaces you rented just on Saturdays. So see, wherever you're at, there's something that you can do. And that's the key, is to do it now. Do not wait.
Bonnie, what was the story with the legendary crab shack?
Excuse me?
The legendary crab shack?
Oh, the crab. Yeah, that's the trailer at DeSoto Marketplace. The guy came here after Katrina from New Orleans. He moved to Dallas and he was broke. He married a DeSoto girl, a local girl here, and they bought a trailer. She was a realtor. They bought a trailer. He was good at cooking crab legs and boiled shrimp. Didn't do anything fried. And he makes $25,000 a week out of a trailer, gross sales, at 50% profit. Oh, by the way, did I tell you he only works 4 days a week? He only works 4 days a week. And he sells out every day because he's legendary. You know what legendary is, right? Legendary is like, do you know that guy who sells crab legs down in DeSoto? Do you know that gal who makes those cupcakes over on First Street? Do you know? That's legendary. And that's what you want to look for in a tenant. You want to look for, or in a person to sell your property to. Remember, you don't have to build these things and rent them. You can build a building. You can restore an old gas station and make it into a taco place and sell it to the taco vendor and make money off of it. You can improve your neighborhood and sell it and then have money to go do another one. You just gotta be flexible. You gotta be thinking all the time, how can I make money? And I hate to see, because people say, well, Monty, I don't want to concentrate on money. I want to build my community. Well, if you don't have money, you're never going to be able to build your community. You gotta make money. You have to make money. And I call it, I'm a capitalist for sure, but I like to say I'm a conscious capitalist, and so I want to do good and I want to make money both. I have to have both or I'm not going to do it. If I was starting,
Josefina, oh, go ahead.
go ahead. Somebody's got something. I can keep.
Josefina, did you want to share your project? Is she still here? Yeah.
Senor Monte, do you want to go ahead and say what you were going to say?
Oh, I was just going to say, if I would, I'm a single guy right now. And if I was starting over today, I'd go buy me a house, a 3-bedroom house, and I'd rent 2 bedrooms out. I'd get me an FHA loan and I'd go rent 2 bedrooms and I'd have me a house for hopefully nearly free. That's what I'd do. And then I'd put it up for sale so I could get some money to go do another one. You want to show us, Josefina, you got something you want to show? Can you show us?
Yeah, to be honest, when I bought the small scale developer, I thought it was going to be easier, that we were going to just Tucson and pull the city and the county would pull in their best. Maybe they were being fun then, but now I'm learning along and presented are giving back to the community and development. I've been working with Ms. Wilda, I think she's on with us too. So Wilda, if you want to feel free to present with me. We form part of a land trust. We're a barrio dedicated to the first plans at Tohonoton. And also in prayer. I don't believe in luck, but I believe that we're blessed. And we can receive good. So I did into the first people. If you want, Ryan, rapidly go through it. Ryan?
Josefina, I think we're having trouble. You're cutting out. We're having trouble hearing you.
The next slide.
Sure.
So then I just trying to see that our body will be preserved, as well as betterment within our families and that benefit our families. And there's a map of where we are, a couple of minutes, 5 minutes away from Tucson, below along the San River, very historical place. And we're surrounded by all these different kinds of development plans in the Central Business District, Rio, and this is just that it has households, but and that's where being a lot of people from different areas coming in to live within our barrio or purchasing the properties. So we want to preserve and buying properties ourselves and for community land trust. Next. Ryan, next slide. Ryan.
Yeah.
Next slide.
Keep going.
Yes, keep to kind of events. We Tucson, Pima County, and Police Department. We're a very active body on community and community gardens where children are quite involved within our community as well as our elders. Next. Next slide, Ryan. Ryan.
Yep.
In October, we started planting trees, over 53 trees within our streets and property owner homes. And anniversary. This
Sorry, it's going back to the trees. Sorry, go ahead, Josefina.
Do you want to
can
go
keep,
to where the house is? Where
sure.
you want to
Yeah, here we go.
the house is at? Further on here. This is a very sentimental historic house that's part of the land trust. And we are looking for the funding to be able to renovate it again. It has a small studio where we plan to have an office space for our nonprofits, our businesses, as well as our neighborhood association. But inside the house, it has a sunken living room that could be used as a small school, as well as a kitchen and its 2 bedrooms. Next slide. There's an outside walls that's awesome to have, like a outside gathering and meditation. And it's something unique that we would want to work on, as well as that there's another section that has a wooden stove of our past elders that used to live there, that of course cooked outside and made their tortillas out in the patio. Next slide. And then we're also in the Sonoran preservation because of the wildlife and all the open space that's around us and being below the mountain. Next slide. A section of plants in the area. And then we have contracts within our neighborhood as well as the men help us fix up, and it's estimated it's from 15,000 to 500,000. No, 1,000 to make it livable, and then redevelop the whole area with 15. It's grassroots of learning how to put together my packet, like you just mentioned, and then having the courage to go ask for the money. Numbers hasn't been good to me. So now how do I change my mind and succeed? That's why I want to take the boot camp. No?
Josefina, I really like what you titled the deal as the servant developer. You know, I think that building on the land, and I know you think like this, building on the land is a spiritual thing. And anytime we change the earth, that we do stuff to it, we have to think about that. And I love what you're talking about, what you're doing and what you're thinking out there. And I think that, you know, I would love to look closer at it's your place out there and come up and collaborate with you on ideas, because, you know, you know, we need more people that are thinking like you. And when I say luck, you know, I say luck to the world out there, but believe me, you know, the Spirit has blessed me 100 times. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for that, you know, and what I do. And so, this, what you're doing, the outdoor, I just built a meditation garden too, prayer and meditation garden at one of my projects. It's the first time I ever built one, and I'm going to build some more. Now I'm going to make them part of every project. But, you know, you're approaching this from the right, you're approaching it right, I think. And I love what you're thinking about. And I really want to explore your project with you there and see if there's other ways that I can help you, and that we can help you, the Incremental Development Alliance, because I love the outdoor spaces. I think we're going to see more back into the nature and outdoor spaces post-COVID, you know, Maybe COVID was supposed to tell us we got to get back out to nature. You know, we got to get back out to the land. You know, I think restaurants are going to be downsized and be more outside. Like if you go to Pasadena, California, you know, all their restaurants are outside. You know, they just have the kitchen inside. And I think you could really build off of what you got and have a beautiful community. And I can't wait to spend this time with you, see what happens. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Josephina. Thank you.
Cool. Well, we got 10 minutes left. I think we can spare it and end the meeting. If you want to follow up with me, you can get on the Tucson Small Scale Facebook group, or you can provide me with your email in the chat. We do a subscriber kind of email thing where we just put out some email blasts to our crowd, so you can learn more about future and upcoming events and stuff that we're doing. I want to thank our presenters, our small scale developers, and our audience for coming together and meet with us over this 3-hour meeting. Very much appreciated. Thank you.